And my homesickness for the States was severe, because immigration is hard, no matter where you move. And my want to resume my studies as a cellist led Nico to transfer his job in France to its headquarters here in San Jose. So we arrived here in San Jose. And San Jose is my first home. It's the first place I ever called a home. And it's the first place I ever fell in love with. I distinctly remember the first time we walked around the downtown in San Jose. And after a long day of apartment hunting, we finally found a particular loft we loved between Japantown and the Hensley district. And we loved it. But, always cautious, because Nico is ever the engineer, he suggested rather than signing right away that we walk around and talk about it. And I remember it was an overcast day in November, like today, and I was fascinated by the buses that were rolling by that had signs in Spanish and Vietnamese and English. It was amazing. So we walked around 4th Street toward downtown. So right before Santa Clara Street, we suddenly stopped. So there's an art gallery called Collide Art Gallery, and it was gigantic with giant just windows, and inside the windows, and inside we could see a huge space covered in art by local artists. And inside there was a guitarist playing, so naturally I went in. Yeah. I wandered the huge space, and I was gazing at the many, many nooks and crannies. And they were just created with movable walls and filled with art from local artists. And this guitarist was there, strumming away, and his fingers were dancing over a Bach bourrée, and I found myself totally enchanted with everything inside of that space. So one installation had shirts screen printed by a local artist, and the shirts had silhouettes of tree trunks, and above the tree trunks were the words printed on the shirts, San Jose, it used to be orchards. So, I didn't realize until recently, as I've come to know more and more of the residents of San Jose, that before San Jose, before it became this tech industry giant, that before it became what it is now, that most residents of San Jose, the ones who were here before the change, before the eruption of Silicon Valley, have memories of a time when the city was orchards. And their childhoods involved playing among trees and picking the extra fruit that would fall on the ground and blanket the area. So that day, when I stood there reading those words, brought there because of the tech industry, that was the day when Nicola and I decided to move downtown and create a space for ourselves because of the arts. So now that we've effectively laid down our roots here, we've had the joy of hearing more and more of the stories from residents of San Jose, of the longtime residents and the artists who give this town a sense of place. These residents and these stories are what makes San Jose innovative. Its history is something that I hope is cultivated and nourished. We feel lucky to have been welcomed into this community and to be able to contribute to the fabric of San Jose's narrative. Just as the repetition of speech can become song-like in our ears, and the repetition of our collective storytelling becomes a universal song. Nicola and I, we represent a shift in the pattern of storytelling, as do many of you here sitting in front of me today. And so I hope that we, as new residents, as transplants, as immigrants, as longtime residents, that we can represent shifts that give rise to new song and form by allowing our collective stories to weave together a new narrative, one that encapsulates the past and the future by allowing us to tell truth while being firmly rooted in the present. Patterns shifting in a piece of music give rise to new song and form, and slight alterations that over time become significant, becoming apparent when we take the time to regard the outside from within. In a similar light, it feels fitting to illuminate the slight shifts in our genetics, mutations, a difference that after time can become significant and evident, leading to a new evolutionary step as an expression of time. The shifts and patterns are expressions of time passing, and they are markers of our history. So it's important to me to also note that these changes would often go unrecognized if it were not for the reinforcement of the repetitive structures that reinforce them and make them apparent. Music and music makers can make these shifts apparent, although music does not do this with an intended aim, but rather as an unintended lateral effect. So similar to sonata form, which itself evolved and is still evolving, just as themes and variations in binary forms gave rise to sonata form, it was a shift in patterns that made evolution possible and evident. What I hope to illuminate today, and what I hope has been made apparent in my storytelling, is the narrative that can arise when science and music are intertwined. That music and science are similar in thematic material. Even our fight for funding is similar. Trying to prove the relevance of these fields to funders and a public that may feel disengaged from both. Trying to stay relevant and prove that these subjects matter and that they shape our collective lives. Asking two subjects coming from two different institutions to shift their patterns, to begin reflecting the communities that they are based in so that they may become more relevant. There are commonalities between every subject, small liaisons and thematic threads that tie us together, creating nests of communities with strands that reach beyond our immediate home. Like neurons within us, science and music allow us to go from within to out, to go beyond us in the immediacy of the moment. And every artist wishes for their art to go beyond them, just as every scientist wishes for their research to go beyond them. Both hope for their craft and their art to become transformative and timeless. So before I close, I'd like to share one more story and play it for you one more time. As a musicologist and a performer, I'm deep in the research process of exploring the French composer Olivier Messiaen's seminal work, The Quartet for the End of Time. And if any work can demonstrate the idea of our inner motifs transformatively reaching beyond us, it is this piece. And its legacy perhaps rests in its own historical narrative. And its genesis and its premiere took place in Silesian Germany in World War II, where Messiaen was held captive as a prisoner of war. This seminal work allowed for Messiaen to escape from the horror of war